Hello everybody, welcome to the I Am IT Geek YouTube channel. My name is Shabazz Dan, I am the IT Geek. It's been a minute since my last video, a few weeks. For those of you that follow me on social media, you know that I've been helping co-launch a new user group over the last month, so my schedule's been quite hectic. The user group, which is a Bradford Cloud User Group, is going really well. We're doing a monthly podcast and we've already done an event as well. So now things are kind of settled with that. I'm now back to some of the I Am IT Geek content. So we're still on the Veeam integration with Microsoft Cloud series, but this is going to be the final episode, which is episode 5 in that series. I was going to do one around Veeam Cloud Connect, but I think what I'm going to do is cover that off in a blog post and probably just integrate a bit of a demo video within that blog post. But today's episode is around BCP into Azure using Veeam. So let's get started with this episode. So first of all, a quick recap on episode 4. As I mentioned, it's been a few weeks since I did my last video. So episode 4 was all around Veeam backup for Azure files. So I started off by doing an overview of the actual service where I kind of discussed the fact that version 10.a of Veeam Backup Replication was the first version to support the Azure files backup. And also other points I made were around the Azure storage account credentials were utilized when setting this up, and also that it's a best practice to utilize Azure private endpoints. So once we did an overview, we then discussed some use cases, and there were sort of 3 use cases that I kind of focused on. The first one was a simple, just backing up your data that's stored on Azure files. So if you've already got file shares, or if you're using Windows Virtual Desktop, for example, and you've got your user profiles in Azure files, simply backing those up using your Veeam server was sort of the first use case. And then we kind of next look at storing offsite backups for Azure NFS 4.1 file shares. So like in a different region, or different type of media, i.e. blob storage. So you could offset your backups essentially of your Azure files. And the final use case that I looked at was migrating from on-premises environments to Azure, or from like a hybrid cloud solution, with protecting your workloads residing in Azure and on-premises. So those were sort of 3 use cases that I kind of focused on in the episode. I then looked at some 2 different solution components. So I say this pretty much every episode, but everyone knows that I love diagrams. I love doing diagrams. So I explained this in 2 different diagrams. One was within Azure. So that was having 2 different regions, having your Azure files, your NFS Azure files in one region, and then having a VNet peer to a different region, and having your long-term retentions in that second region, and like a Veeam backup server on either side. So that was the first sort of cloud-based with Azure solution component. And the second was more like a distributed, what I like to call distributed solution component, and that was with on-premises. So I had Veeam backup replication on-premises, and then with again some backup repositories. And then I had like a VPN express route kind of coming into 2 different regions, again using the separate regions, and again a VNet peer between those 2 regions, and various resources on either side. So some repositories in region 1, some repositories in region 2 to offset the sort of archive backups, and then proxies on either side as well. So those were 2 sort of solutions that I kind of explained with the diagrams that I did. I then finished the episode by doing a demo of backing up and adding an NFS file share and doing a backup of it. So I will put the link of that video in the description if anyone fancies watching the full video. It's a good one. So now let's move on to this episode, the final episode, episode 5, which is BCP into Azure using Veeam. So just to give an explanation into what I'll be discussing in this video. So as I mentioned, it's business continuity into Azure using Veeam. So I'll do a bit of an overview of what that actually means. So not just the Azure part, but also from a Veeam perspective, what other services and products do they have to do with BCP. And then I'll discuss what we're really going to be focusing on in this video, which is direct restores to Microsoft Azure via Veeam. And obviously that's what my demo is going to be based on as well. And then I'll just go into a little bit of detail about the supported backup types, and sort of what sort of resources can we utilize this direct restore for. And then finish off with a bang and do a quick demo. So I've already got kind of most of it set up, so I'll just be showing the process involved in doing a direct restore to Microsoft Azure from the Veeam console. So a quick overview of BCP using Veeam. So BCP, for those that don't know, is a business continuity plan. So essentially it's a way of recovering your business essentially in the sort of event where you have a catastrophe. So, you know, for example, God forbid, your on-premises infrastructure fails or is unavailable. You know, you have a sort of a backup site or backup location where you can essentially turn on your VMs or your servers to a point where you can actually keep your business running. So BCP is a very, very important part of any organization's sort of plan. So just a quick overview from a Veeam perspective. So Veeam have a few different services around BCP. They have more than a few, but there's a couple I just want to kind of focus on in this episode. So the first one is replication to another physical site. So their main flagship product is called Veeam Backup and Replication. So as well as doing backups to kind of repositories, you can also do replication jobs where essentially it copies a replica of your VMs to a different physical on-premises site. So that could be in the same city, or it could be a different physical building within your main site, or it could be like I said, a different office in a different part of the world. And essentially, you can then, in the sort of event where you have a catastrophe, you can click of a switch, you can uplift and turn on your copied virtual machines at that site, and it tends to be a downscaled version of your main site, because again it's a disaster recovery sort of scenario. So in those sort of instances, you don't really run at full capacity, but it's something that, like, replication jobs, they run every night just like your backup jobs do. So they're as up to date as they can be on like a daily basis. So yeah, there's kind of replication to another physical site. In more recent years, in more recent times, you've been able to do replication to the public cloud as well now. So similar to how you do replica job to a physical site, you do the same, but to AWS or Azure, which are the two sort of main market leaders in public cloud at the moment. So again, you can have that as your sort of secondary site, the public cloud, and those machines stay in a turn, like a shutdown state. So again, it's can be quite cost effective because you're not actually using any resources until you turn those on. So you just be paying for sort of storage. So that again is another sort of service you can get with BCP using Veeam. And the third one is what we're going to focus on in my demo, and which are the next couple of slides, which is direct restore to public cloud, AWS or Azure. So obviously, with me being a Microsoft bod, I'm going to be focusing on the Azure side of it. But essentially, you don't need, this is not doing any replica jobs. You've got backup jobs, you've got backup repositories, and with a few clicks, you essentially start off a job that restores rather than restoring the job, restoring the VM, should I say, to your on-premises infrastructure or a secondary replication site, you actually restore it directly into Azure. So depending on the size of the VM and the disk, it can be a bit more time consuming. In my scenario, I've got a backup of my laptop, so it's like almost a terabyte disk. So I'm going to show the process of it, but it probably won't complete. But then I can show you the resources are being provisioned, like my disk. You can see my disk in Azure as the job's going on. So yeah, that's what we're going to focus on in the next slide. So as I mentioned, I wanted to just go into a bit of detail around the direct restore to Azure via Veeam, and my demo shortly will be based around this. So you've probably noticed I've not done a diagram yet, so here we are. Here's my first diagram, the only diagram I've got in this video, so don't worry. And I wanted to essentially just show the sort of setup that I'm talking about here, and that I'll be showing in my lab and demo later on. So we've got our on-premises area here. So we've got backup of VMs. We've got backup of physical machines, for example. In my demo, I've done a backup of a physical machine using the Veeam agent. And we have backup repositories, so I've got just like a disk attached to my Veeam server in my instance, and that's where my backup is going. And what we have then is we have an Azure proxy. So this isn't a Veeam proxy, this is actually an Azure proxy in Azure, and we have different workloads that we can directly restore to. So you don't need a VPN or a direct connection into Azure. It's done through essentially you link your cloud account. So in this case, it's my Azure account. You link that and your subscription to your on-premises Veeam console, and it essentially attaches your VM to that. So you need to make sure you have your subscription, your resource group, and again, we need to make sure you have a storage account within that resource group in the relevant location as well. That's quite important. And as long as you have all that, and again, your network, your VNet for your VM to sit on, you can then do the restore. Before moving on to the demo, I just want to quickly touch on the supported backup types. So with the direct restore to Azure, there's two types that are supported, which are Linux virtual machines and Windows virtual machines. So these are both supported when you're using the direct restore option to Azure or AWS for that matter. And in my demo, I'm going to be doing a Windows 10 agent backup, so it's like a physical backup. So without further ado, I will go into the demo. So here I am in my Veeam backup replication server, which is simply just a VM on my on-premises lab. And what I've got is Veeam backup and replication installed on this server with just a license. And I've got some storage, just a disk attached to it. And what I've done, I set up a backup job, an agent backup job, which backs up my physical Windows 10 laptop. And I ran that once just to get a backup of some sort of disk and a VM. Now, what I haven't done is I haven't set up anything else to allow me to do that direct restore to Azure. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to backup infrastructure and get our proxy set up first. So go on backup proxies, right click, and we've got several options here. What we want is we want to add an Azure restore proxy. So we're going to click on that, and that opens up the wizard. So we'll give it a name. Let's call it Cloud PX, Cloud Proxy, for example, and click on next. So here, these are going to be the local administrator account that's going to be configured on the VM that's provisioned. So I've got a pre-configured Blue Peter style for those who remember that. Is one I created earlier. So that's just a local admin account that I've specified for there. Click on next. Now we need to match it to our subscription. So I've got my pay-as-you-go subscription. As you remember in one of the previous videos, I added my I Am IT Geek account. So click on the location. Obviously got to think about where we're going to have it. So I want it in UK South because that's where all my resources and my resource group is within Azure, my storage. Click on next. Let it do its thing and just query the cloud. There we go, it's found it. Here I'm going to specify the size of the VM that I want to provision. So I'm just going to leave it on the default one that it's provisioned, which is 4 cores and 8 gig of RAM. And it's got a maximum disks as well there. And it's also picked up my storage account. So I've got a Veeam SA99 storage account, which I pre-provisioned. So click on next. And here it's asking us, where do we want to place the VM? Do we want to do it into an existing resource group or do we want to create a new one? And if possible, I'd like to put it into my IT Geek RGO1 resource group. And again, it's going to give the VM a DNS label of Cloud PX, which I've specified. Click on next, it'll take us down to, which you can see on the left hand side on the wizard, it shows us what the next one's going to be. So it's going to be the network, you specify what network. It's already pre-populated it, so I've already got my VNet set up and I've also got my subnet set up, so leave that at default. Obviously, if you do have multiple virtual networks, multiple subnets, and you want to customize it, feel free to change that. Then we're going to apply those settings and let it go through its kind of wizard and setup, and that's finished quite quickly. Oh no, it's still running, my bad. So it's deploying the Azure VM proxy now. So what I'll do is we'll let this deploy. I'll stop the recording here and I'll come back once it's deployed just to show you that's completed. So that has now finished. It didn't take too long actually. It took about 3 to 4 minutes. So as you can see, that's all the tasks are complete there. It's installed all the required services. So click on next, gives us a summary, and we can finish that. So what I want to quickly just show you is my actual Azure portal, just to show you that proxy VM is actually in there and it has been provisioned. So bear with me. I'll quickly change my screen. So here we can see the Azure portal, and there is my Cloud PX virtual machine. That is now my proxy in Azure. So what we're going to do now is going to flip back to the Veeam console, and we're actually going to go through the process of directly restoring to Azure. Here we are back in my Veeam backup replication console on my on-premises Veeam server. Let's go back to the Home tab. From here, if we see all the options we've got at the top here, I want to click on Restore, and obviously we've only got an agent backup, so click on that. And we've got 4 different options here. So do I want to restore the entire machine, which is what I'm going to do, a specific disk, a guest file, or application item restore. So click on entire machine. So this is almost like a 1 terabyte machine. So I'm not going to complete the restore, but I just want to show the process, and I can then show you the resources being provisioned in Azure. So again, here we've got 3 different options. We can either do an instant recovery to another Hyper-V server. So this would be maybe another on-premises in a different site, or in the same location. We can do restore to Amazon EC2, which I mentioned in my presentation, that public cloud is supported with this, which is both Amazon and Azure. And finally at the bottom, which is the option we're going to choose, which is restore to Microsoft Azure. So let's click on that. So here we are in the Restore to Microsoft Azure wizard. I want to add our virtual machine in here. So we see we've got our agent backup here, and there's my VM backup. Click on add, and there it has. It's named it my IP address. It's my private IP address, and it's got a size of the backup there. Even though my disk is 900, almost a terabyte, it does have the size of the backup there, which is what's been used. Click on next, and this is where, similar to when we added the proxy, we need to link it with our subscription in Azure. So I've got my subscription already there, I've got the location, it's pre-populated, and also it's picked up that I've got an Azure proxy VM as well. So click on next. And this is where, again, if you're just keeping it on the left hand side, it's got all the options that we're going to go through. So the VM size will be next. So click on the actual option there, click on edit. So here we can go through and select what type of VM size. So I'm going to go with, for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to go with a medium sized machine. So I'll go with, where's the B versions? I wanted a B version. We'll go with that one there, 4 cores and 16 gig. And we'll use storage type. We'll go with a managed disk. And click OK. So that's all sorted, and we'll go move forward to the resource group next. So we want to make sure we select so it's already got my IT Geek RG01 in there. If you want to create a new one, you could, or if you wanted to provision a different one, which I don't have a different one that's relevant. Click on OK there. I can also give my VM a name if I wanted to. At the moment, it's just picked up that, which is essentially what is called my on-premises machine in my Veeam backup without the dots. So I could just click on that and go Shabs LT for Shabs laptop, or you can add a prefix or a suffix. So you've got a lot of good options there to specify and customize your VM name. So let's click on next, and here we have the next one, which is a network. So again, we can click on the option there, click on network. Again, it's already pre-populated. Give it a public IP address if I wanted to, which I don't in this instance. We can also specify a network security group if you want. Again, for the purpose of this demo, I'm not going to, because all I'm showing is the process of setting up this direct restore. So this is a really good option. It lets us scan the restored VM for any malware prior to performing the recovery. So if the scenario that you're in is where you've been crypto locked, or you've got a virus or something like that, you're directly restoring for that purpose, then it's a good option to make sure your backup's not corrupt or not got any malware on it. Again, for this example, I'm not going to do that. So I'll just click on next and just give it. You can give a reason here. I'm just going to type demo. And finally, again, it gives you a summary, and also then at the bottom here, an option to power on the VM after restoring. I'm going to untick that because we're not actually going to restore the full VM just because it'll take too long. So I just want to show you that the disk is being provisioned shortly. Click on finish. Down here on running, we'll see that his job is now running at 0%. But what I'll do is I'll give it about 5-6 minutes, and then I will go back into the Azure portal and just show that my disk is actually being copied across. So as you can see, the VM is now restoring, and it's starting to restore my disk, and you see it's done 112 meg of almost 900 gig. So again, like I said, we're not going to complete this backup, but I just wanted to show the fact that a disk is being provisioned. So I'm just going to hop across to my Azure tenancy, and I want to quickly go to let's quickly go on virtual machines, just show that the VM's not quite there yet. So you can see I've only still got my cloud proxy. But if we go back to home, and from here I want to go to disks, what we should see is here, there we go. So there's my Shabs LT disk. Remember, that's what I call my VM. So that's my disk. It's currently being provisioned, so it's being copied across, as we can see by going back to the console here. And it's slowly chugging away. It's done 169 meg, so that's going to take a while to do just because of the size of the disk and my internet speed. But you know, for those who, you know, if you're a business and you have, you know, bigger lines and bigger network connectivity and much better bandwidth, this could be a much quicker process. So it's a good tool to have if you want to restore directly to Azure. And that brings an end to my demo. So that's the final episode done. Just want to give a quick summary as to what we discussed before I say my goodbye. So we had a look at an overview of you know, BCP using Veeam. So that included backup and replication to a different on-premises site, be it a physical site, be it a different city, country, or even within the same sort of area but a different building potentially. We also talked about BCP into the cloud. So, you know, instead of having a physical site, you replicate into Azure or AWS. The final bit was doing a direct restore into Azure, which was kind of be the focus of this video. So then I went into a bit more detail around direct restore to Microsoft Azure with Veeam. I showed you my diagram and how that looks from a logical perspective. I just touched on some supported backup types, which are Linux VMs or Windows VMs. So in my demo, which was the final bit, it was a Windows 10 agent backup. So it's my laptop. And then I went into my demo, of course, which you've just seen. So that brings an end to this episode 5 of BCP into Azure using Veeam. But also it brings an end to the Veeam series. It's been a long one, so, you know, 5 episodes. I've massively enjoyed doing this. Veeam is something that I've used from the start of my career, really, not just since I've been doing cloud. Probably for the last 10 to 15 years I've been using Veeam. So it's a product that I have a lot of time for. It's an amazing product, and it's one that I've had a lot of good experiences with. So I was really, really wanted to do this series. I'm happy it's over. I can move on to the next one now. So for the next series, I've got some interesting ideas planned. It's all going to be around my experiences with migrating on-premises workloads to the cloud. So I'm going to use different tools that I've utilized in my career. So that'll include, you know, migrating file shares into Microsoft Cloud, be it SharePoint or Azure Files. I'm looking to do some stuff around Exchange as well. I've done a lot of Exchange migrations. So I'll do kind of a hybrid setup, and I'll show you how you know, my experience, best practices around migrating Exchange. And also we'll obviously touch on virtual machines and those sort of compute workloads and the tools that I've utilized in my career to migrate those type of workloads. So it's going to be a demo filled, you know, diagram filled. So I will be giving out some more information in the upcoming days. But again, thank you very much for your support. Please do like and subscribe. I do thank you everybody for the positive feedback, even the feedback which is asking me to do improvements in certain areas. I really do appreciate it. And I'll put some links into our user group. Be sure to follow us as well. We're doing a lot of things around women in tech this month, with it being we've just gone past International Women's Day, where we had a great interview with Holly Lehman and Isadora Kantanich. I hope I pronounced that right. Sorry if I didn't. But we've done a great video with them. Please go check that out as well. But until next time, thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe and goodbye.